Hey guys, Ryan here, and today we are back with the beginner's guide to the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season. Whether you guys are a new fan who's looking to learn about the drivers in the field, whether you're potentially a fan whose favorite driver just retired, giving plenty of examples of potential drivers to pick from, or you're just a fan who wants to catch up on what they missed in the offseason, this is the video for you. So hopefully you guys enjoy, and let's get right into the video. Alright, so maybe you're a fan of proven winners and champions of the sport. The NASCAR Cup Series in 2024 will have a total of about 7 proven Cup champions and several more race winners to talk about. So we'll start off with the proven champions of the sport, and it makes sense to start off with the most recent champion, Ryan Blaney, who just picked up his first Cup Series championship this past November in Phoenix, as he burned it down in the desert, winning the second championship in a row for Team Penske, driving the number 12 car, finally breaking out of his shell. He's been kind of one of those drivers where he'll win somewhere between 1, 2, maybe 3 races a year. He's been in the leagues or in the series since 2017 on a full-time basis. Made the move over to Penske, and yeah, he looks poised for another championship run here, trying to go back-to-back for the first time since Jimmy Johnson did it in 2009 and 2010. Some of the other champions of the sport include guys like Martin Truex Jr., who has been contemplating retirement, so maybe if you're coming off of a recently retired driver, maybe don't pick him as your new favorite, considering odds are he'll leave you in the same spot in about a year or two. But Martin Truex Jr. last year was your regular season champion, had the best regular season and just had a bit of a collapse in the playoffs, but he is a former champion from the 2017 season, and he has had some strong runs, and who knows, maybe this could be the year that he wins a championship to try and put himself leaving on a high note in terms of his career. So he'll be driving the number 19 car. Then you got the 2021 champion, Kyle Larson. If you're a fan of controversy, maybe he's the one for you. You've got obviously the controversy he was involved in with the incident from April, and if you guys don't know, Google it. I'm not going to bother saying it because I think most of you guys probably know it. But yeah, Easter Sunday night 2020 put a big black mark on his career going forward, and he had to sit out for a year, complete sensitivity training, and then return to the sport in 2021 with a massive fire under him. Went and won a ton of races, won the championship, and since then has looked like a perennial race win contender pretty much on a week-to-week basis, with the only stumbling blocks coming from his teammates in that camp. Speaking of teammates in his camp, you got Chase Elliott, also driving that number 9. He was your 2020 series champion, son of former NASCAR champion and Hall of Famer Bill Elliott, driving the same number that his dad drove. Chase Elliott is a fan favorite, and for good reason. He is a very talented driver and has been winning races pretty much. I think he's won a race every year that he's competed full-time since 2018. Obviously, last year he's coming off of an injury, so last year's stats will look down compared to what he's put up, but he is a proven champion, and I wouldn't be shocked to see that number 9 go and win another race, or even a championship. Then you got a couple of the Ford contenders. If you guys got a couple other Ford contenders who are former champions, you got Brad Keselowski, who's one of the I think he's the only driver owner on the list this year. So you've got Brad Keselowski driving for Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, trying to bring that team back up. So if you're a fan of a guy who drives for himself, goes and represents himself in pretty much everything, maybe Brad Keselowski's your guy. He was the champion back in 2012, and that team's been on a significant upswing over the last 12 months, so I wouldn't put it past seeing him return the 6 to victory lane for the first time in a long time. Then you got Joey Logano, the 2022 and one of only two active two-time champions. He was also the champion back in 2018. Both those championships kind of coming when he wasn't the best driver of the year, but he made it count. He showed up when it counted and got it done in both Miami and Phoenix to claim championships 1 and 2. So, could this be the year that he goes and gets a third championship to set himself apart from the rest of the crowd? And speaking of the other driver who could potentially go and do that, Kyle Busch, after a long career at Joe Gibbs Racing last year, moved over to the number 8 car for Richard Childress Racing. Came this close to winning the Daytona 500. Actually led at the 500-mile mark, but due to overtime ended up coming up short of the victory. Proceeded to then go and win three races on the season and looked like a championship contender. Ultimately, things just didn't piece together. And for context, he is one of my favorite drivers, so take that bias for what it is. But Kyle Busch is an extremely talented driver, although you might not always like what he has to say, but he will always tell you what he's actually thinking. He's not going to put up with saying something just to try and ease people's feelings. So, that's your reigning champions. Figure next up we'll go and talk about some of the guys who have won the biggest race in the sport, the Daytona 500. So, the guy who's won the most the active driver with the most 500 wins, that's easily Denny Hamlin. He's won 3 of them in the last few years, 2016, 2019, and 2020. He could very easily be poised for another win here in about within the next few days. But Daytona can be a little bit of a carousel, but Denny seems to find himself on the right side of it more often than not. So, still searching for that first championship despite a lot of years where he's been very close, including last year where he was the 5th best driver on the season and the best of the ones who didn't make it to the championship for. A couple of the other drivers, because this race is, again, lending to the nature of the Daytona 500 being a little bit of a chaotic race. These are drivers who might not have the most success, and in fact, I think in most of these situations, it's one of only about 2 or 3 wins on their entire career. But Austin Cindric got his first win in the 2022 Daytona 500 in his second attempt at the race. He's entering his 3rd season as a NASCAR Cup Series driver, but he's already won the sport's biggest race. And now he can go and, now that he's had a down year, he can try and, he's poised for a bounce back season here in 2024. Then you've got Austin Dillon driving the famed number 3 car that Dale Earnhardt Sr. made famous. He won the 500 back in 2018. He's picked up a couple of other wins along the way, including a Coca-Cola 600 back in 2017, and a win at Texas as well to go along with it. So, might not always be a race-winning contender, but most years he puts himself in that conversation of making the playoffs, and if you can make it there, who knows? Maybe he can get hot at the right time and make a run. Then you've got a couple of drivers that are, some of my own personal favorites, so I will try not to put too much bias on them, but Michael McDowell and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. have also won the 500 in 2021 and 2023 respectively. Michael McDowell, it was his first career win, and he picked up a second one here this past year at the battle on the Brickyard 200 or whatever they called that race. But Michael McDowell is a veteran road course racer, so if you're a big fan of the style of racing of, say, F1, IndyCar, or even the World Endurance Championship or sports car racing, potentially Michael McDowell could be your guy, because he will excel at those types of tracks. Tracks like Circuit of the Americas, Watkins Glen International, and the Charlotte Road Course, which are all featured on the schedule, including a couple of races in the playoffs. And Stenhouse, he's been much more of a super speedway specialist over his career, as I mentioned, winning the 2023 Daytona 500. his other career wins coming in 2017. He won back-to-back races at both Daytona and Talladega to claim his first 2 wins of his career, all in the same style of racing. He's found one style of racing that really works for him, and he's been able to make a career doing it. So, he's one of my personal favorites, but just know he's either going to try and win the race or he'll crash trying. But hey, maybe you're not a fan of a driver that's already well established. Maybe you're a new fan coming in and you want to pick a driver who's in your same position. Well, the NASCAR Cup Series, they're gonna have 3 rookies drivers in the series this year. You got Josh Berry, who did a bit of substitute driving last year when guys like Alex Bowman and Chase Elliott were out with injuries, so he has a bit of Cup experience already. He's stepping into the number 4 car for Stewart-Haas Racing, taking over the mantle held by 2014 champion Kevin Harvick. That looks to be a driver trying to really make a mark. And theoretically, it's a pretty good car. We'll have to wait and see, because the rest of Stewart-Haas has been a little bit of a mess, aside from the 4 car, so we'll see if that 4 car can maintain its steady approach to the NASCAR Cup Series. The other 2 rookies are driving for the same team, the up-and-coming Spire Motorsports, who just acquired a 3rd charter to guarantee that they will have 3 cars in every single race, and 2 of those cars they decided to fill with rookies. You got Carson Josar, who was a Truck Series championship contender 1 year ago, who's making the jump from the trucks all the way up to the NASCAR Cup Series. He makes his he made his Cup Series debut at Gateway last year. I believe he made a total of about 6 or 7 starts last year, but this will be his official rookie year, driving the number 77 car. And he looks to try and impress, but he's going to also have to try and, I think, earn some trust from his fellow competitors, as he does have a little bit of a reputation of being a little bit all over the place, similar to Stenhouse. And then you've got Zane Smith, who is one of the premier Truck Series championship contenders over the last 2 or 3 years, driving for Front Row Motorsports, and through a collaboration with the Team Trackhouse, they have put him in the number 71 car for Spire Motorsports this season. So Zane Smith will be getting his feet wet in this car, with the hopes to end up moving up to the Trackhouse car within a year or 2. Speaking of Trackhouse, they've got a couple of other cars that will be running full-time. Maybe you're a fan of video games or video game style moves. Well, let me introduce you to Ross Chastain. He's a 10th generation watermelon farmer who does insane moves like this all over the NASCAR track using every inch, and he will find something that nobody else thought was possible and then go and get the move banned, because they banned the move just after he used it. So you might not see him do that, but he will find some other way to go and bend the rules. They're not rule breakers, they're rule makers, as DW, or Darrell Waltrip, if you guys don't know him, would used to always say. And his teammate, Daniel Suarez, being the only Mexican-born driver in the field, he's got some big expectations behind him driving that number 99 car. He was the driver originally picked by this team to help build their organization when they entered the sport a couple of years ago. So Suarez has been a little bit of a journeyman driver as he's bounced around between some of the best teams in the entire sport and has finally found a long-term home here, potentially at Trackhouse Racing. But with a lot of drivers eyeing those seats, he's going to have to fight to keep that spot. So number 99 could be a fun one to watch going forward. Then we got Colleague Racing and the number 16 car up next. That car is going to be a rotation of drivers, mostly featuring road course stars AJ Allmendinger, who has won multiple races in the NASCAR Cup Series, all on road courses at both Watkins Glen and the Indianapolis road course. But he will also be racing this weekend in the Daytona 500, a race that he has been very close to winning, and he is very consistent at. So I wouldn't put it past Allmendinger to potentially pick up an oval win this weekend. But the other driver he'll be sharing that car with is his teammate, Shane Van Gisbergen, who will be running the full-time Xfinity Series season with Allmendinger on Saturdays. And Shane Van Gisbergen, his main goal in driving this season is to try and work his way up again to another one of those Trackhouse seats that we mentioned earlier. So Shane Van Gisbergen, he is from the Australian Supercars series, is where he's been honing his skills. Came over to NASCAR last year, winning his first ever race that he ever attempted out in the streets of Chicago. Ended up getting that win and impressed enough to earn himself this full-time seat in the Xfinity Series, and I believe 7 starts in this Colleague number 16 car for the season. So potentially, if you guys like some international flair, that would be the guy for you to root for. Maybe you're a big fan, though, of America and a big fan of kind of the good old American story. We got, Stewart-Haas Racing is full of options for you. You got Noah Gragson with the Black Rifle Coffee car. He takes over the number 10 from Eric Almirola. He is... he's pretty much a rookie. He did run most of the season last year, which will technically disqualify him from being a Rookie of the Year contender this year, but this is definitely a much better situation than the 42 car he was in last year, so don't be turned off necessarily by the poor performances of last year, but character concerns have been surrounding him, especially considering the issues that kept him out of the car for the second half of the season. Alternatively, at Stewart-Haas Racing, they also got guys like Chase Briscoe and Ryan Preece, who have both grew up doing local racing at many different levels all throughout the country. Briscoe mostly honing his skills on pretty much every dirt track throughout the Midwest, between midgets and sprint car racing, going and ending up upside down on a number of occasions. And Tony Stewart found him there and brought him to NASCAR. He's had a bunch of consistent seasons in the Xfinity Series, was brought up to the Cup Series. He's only won one race up to this point in his career, but he looks poised for a breakout season now that he is in position to be the potentially new team leader at that organization. And Ryan Preece has cut his teeth on pretty much every paved short track up and down the Northeast. Hailing from Connecticut, he definitely looks poised to go and make a potential run after a very scary-looking crash at Daytona last year. I wouldn't say that Ryan Preece is done by any means. He looks poised to try and, again, prove that why he's got that 41 car. The 15 car will be a host to a rotation of drivers, but the main feature in that car will be Riley Herbst, as Riley Herbst will be driving that car in association with the Stewart-Haas Racing Group. They'll be driving that car. Riley's a young kid from the Las Vegas area, finally won his first Xfinity Series race last year, and has started to look ready to potentially move up, and this is going to be his time to try and prove why he should be in this series full-time next year. Alright. Some other drivers that you'll only see in a few races this year include guys like Kaz Growler running the 36 this weekend for the 500, Anthony Alfredo, BJ McLeod. Most of them are only running a couple of races here and there, but a lot of them are looking for opportunities to get full-time in this sport and or running full-time in lower series in addition to that. Alfredo will be full-time down in the Xfinity Series. And then you've got 7-time champion Jimmy Johnson, who will be completing potentially a mini retirement tour as he is racing, I believe, 11 of the 36 races on the season, including but not limited to a return to the Dover International Speedway, where he won 11 times, if I'm not mistaken, on my stats. So those are a bunch of the part-timers. Let's get back to some of the veterans of the sport who are still trying to make their case You got guys like Cory Joy, who will be teamed up with a couple of rookies with Carson Josar and Zane Smith. He drives that number 7 car. Came oh so close to winning Atlanta a couple years ago, but as of lately, he is just trying to keep the car in one piece, which he does more often than not. Brings it home with the steering wheel on it, and still looking for that first win. Chris Buescher, the other driver out of Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, knocked off 3 wins late in the season last year, allowing him to not only advance to the playoffs, but actually advance all the way to the round of 8, and looked like a real contender for the championship there for about a month and a half, 2 months before kind of fading in the last few weeks. And I say, he could be poised if he has that spark at the right time, could potentially jolt him to a championship. Would not be surprised. Christopher Bell, he's been to the championship for 2 times in the last 2 seasons, looking to try and make it 3 in a row this year and potentially claim championship number 1. He has a very coveted seat there at Joe Gibbs Racing. He's got a lot to prove as he's kind of that team's future. He's one of the youngest drivers. He's been one of the young guns in the series, but as the series gets younger and younger, he's got to start thinking like he's got to be the veteran driver. And that team is going to be relying on him for years to come. Harrison Burton driving the iconic red and white Wood Brothers car this year. This year is, again, as it's been for a couple of years for him, it's been very much make or break. You got to either succeed or you will probably get moved out of that ride, although the sponsorship that he brings with him definitely helps keep him in that car. At some point, the results are going to have to catch up with him, so maybe this will be the year where he finally shows up. Then you got some guys who, then you got Bubba Wallace, who has been making his way through the ranks. He's been at the Cup level since 2018, which feels like a lot longer than it has been. It's been about 5 years in the Cup Series. He's almost won the sport's biggest race, the Daytona 500, twice. He's come up second place. And in some cases, you could argue that he probably should have been awarded a win at one of those 2 events because of potential rules infractions where NASCAR opted not to step in and officiate. But Bubba Wallace, he's won a couple of races, including Kansas and Talladega. And if he can manage to string together a couple of wins at the right time, again, wouldn't be surprised to see him go and pop off. But he has been looking better and better. He's improved every year of his career and made his first playoff appearance 1 year ago. William Byron, coming off of one of the best years of his NASCAR career, winning 6 races, including tracks like Vegas, Phoenix, Darlington. Despite multiple close calls where he could have very easily turned what ended up being a race win, could have very easily turned into a wreck. He manages to stay cool under pressure, find his way through the wreck, and be able to put that number 24 car back into victory lane for the first time since Jeff Gordon drove it. So, potentially seeing some more out of that 24 this year. Whether or not it's a stepping stone, who knows? Maybe this year could be his championship season. Daniel Hemrick returns to the Cup Series for the first time in several years after a lackluster 2019 rookie season. He went back down to the Xfinity Series to reprove himself, won an Xfinity Series championship down there, and has now reappeared up in the Cup Series as he has worked his way back through the ranks, and he will be driving that number 31 car for Colleague Racing throughout the full season. Look forward to seeing what he can do in that car. Justin Haley made that car look pretty good last year, so hopefully Hemrick can keep up to that same mentality. Todd Gillan is the son of former NASCAR Cup Series driver David Gillan. And much like his father, he's driving for an underfunded, underproven team with the number 38 car for Front Row Motorsports, but don't count him out. He's looked very good, and when the team had to decide between him and another up-and-coming driver, Zane Smith, this year, they they chose to put all their chips on the table with Todd Gillan, so they have confidence in his abilities going forward, that they were willing to let their truck championship driver potentially walk in favor of Todd Gillan. So don't count him out. He could potentially win the first race for that car. And he's definitely looking forward to it, too. Then we got a team who recently changed manufacturers in the offseason. You got John Hunter Nemechek and Eric Jones, who will be driving the two cars for the Legacy Motor Club, which will be a Toyota team this year. So John Hunter Nemechek driving the number 42 car. This is his return to the Cup Series for the first time since 2020, when he moved up to the Cup Series to try and make a run at the Rookie of the Year. Ultimately, it just didn't work out. He wasn't really put in a great situation, and obviously with COVID hitting at the worst possible time for a rookie driver, he ended up not working out in the Cup Series, went down to both the Truck Series and Xfinity Series, won a lot of races, and made his way back up to the Cup Series through the Toyota pipeline, and will now be driving for the famed team formerly owned by Richard Petty. So certainly wouldn't count him out. He's been winning a ton the last couple of years. Look to him to maybe be one of those drivers to win their first race in 2023. Eric Jones is a very consistent race-winning contender. He's won races in some of the best equipment, and he's gone and taken some very lackluster equipment to wins at very tough tracks to win at, including the track Too Tough to Tame, which is Darlington Raceway. He's won the Southern 500, the 500-mile race at Darlington, twice, including driving the Richard Petty 43 to victory there in a year where the Richard Petty team was very much struggling to compete at any level. Eric Jones managed to set aside all of that to find victory lane when nobody else thought it was possible. Then if you guys are big basketball fans, you'll know the team owner of this next team. We talked briefly about his teammate, Bubba Wallace, earlier, but Michael Jordan actually owns two cars in the league, number 45 as well as number 23. And number 45 this year is driven by Tyler Reddick, who moved over from RCR a couple of years ago to drive this car. He drives the number 45, took over for Kurt Busch, and he's been looking very strong as a contender there, winning a couple of races a year, and potentially building to where a couple of things break right. He could end up finding himself in position to try and win another championship for the Jordan brand. And then we got a couple more drivers here to talk about. We got Alex Bowman driving for Hendrick Motorsports. The questions have been swirling around his potential future at that team. He does have a multi-year contract under his belt right now, but with how many young guns have been coming up through the NASCAR ranks, he is going to have to start feeling some amount of pressure to perform, and especially coming off of an injury. I think the biggest question mark is got to be leveled at him. Does he still have it? He had a concussion at the end of the 2022 season and then had a back injury away from the NASCAR circuit in the spring of 2023, both of which ended up leaving him out of races for a significant portion of the season, and has now left him in a very questionable spot in terms of what is he going to be able to accomplish in his return to the racetrack. Hoping for a full season, but we'll have to wait and see, obviously, if he can manage to stay healthy for the first time in 3 years. Justin Haley, after making a very controversial decision late in the summer last year, he opted to leave the stable Colleague Racing, who had been his home for many years in the Xfinity Series. He opted to leave them for potentially greener pastures at Rick Ware Racing, a team that's been pretty much on the fringe of going out of business, it feels like, with how they've signed their drivers, usually relying on on the check to have to clear to get a driver in there. This is the first time I feel like they've actually picked a driver where the talent, I think, exceeds the amount of money coming out of the checkbook. So Justin Haley's a talented driver. He qualified for the LA Clash last week, so certainly he could perform well and above the expectations of that car normally, so certainly wouldn't rule him out. He's a former Cup Series winner, and as I say, it's only a matter of time before he wins again, I think. And then the final driver to talk about in the NASCAR Cup Series, we got the number 54, driven by Ty Gibbs, son of Hall of Fame football coach Joe Gibbs. He also drives for his granddad's team there, driving for that number 54 Toyota. He's going into his sophomore season hoping to avoid a sophomore slump as he slowly built speed throughout the late spring and early summer of the NASCAR Cup Series season. Hasn't won a race yet, but in a Gibbs car, it's pretty much just a matter of time before anybody wins in that equipment. So certainly would be looking for Ty Gibbs to get his first win of his Cup career this year. But for the most part, he's trying to avoid that sophomore slump. So that has been an introduction to every NASCAR Cup Series driver that will be racing in the 2024 season. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, leave a like on the video. Subscribe if you guys are new so you guys don't miss any future videos or live streams. Also, comment down below who your guys' favorite drivers are going to be, if you guys know who your favorite driver is going to be. And if not, hopefully this video helped you guys with deciding who you guys are going to root for. And join me in a few hours for the NASCAR Daytona 500 qualification effort. I'll be live streaming qualifying and reacting to every qualification run. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in that live stream later tonight. But until next time, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next video, live stream, whatever you guys decide to do with the rest of your day. Have a great day, everybody, and goodbye!